Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're going to be taking a look at the iPad Air running iOS 11. Is it still worth buying? The iPad Air was released in November of 2013, shipped with iOS 7, and was the second major redesign to the iPad lineup, the first being the iPad 2. It introduced a much lighter and thinner body, hence the name iPad Air, and weighs in at only 469 grams, and is only 7.5 millimeters thick. This thing is super light and very comfortable to hold, and is a perfect example of Apple's quality products. It has a beautiful modern design, and it's just a pleasure to look at. It comes in a couple colors, being white and silver and space gray. The gold version was introduced in 2014 with the iPad Air 2. So the iPad Air only has those two colors, which, I mean, really, how many colors do you need? The device comes with either 16, 32, 64, or 128 gigabytes. I would recommend getting at least the 32 gigabyte model, but if you're not going to be taking a lot of pictures, which you probably shouldn't be with a tablet anyway, you might be okay with only 16 gigabytes. You can get a cellular version if you want to, and if you do, it supports both 3G and LTE networks. If you don't need that, you can get the cheaper Wi-Fi only version. So those are some of the basic big name features of the iPad Air, and are all fairly typical for any tablet, even in 2017. So let's move on. The iPad is a 9.7 inch Retina display with a resolution of 1536 by 2048 and a pixel density of 264 pixels per inch. The screen looks great despite the relatively low pixel density, and is overall perfectly acceptable for the average user. Totally fine for 2017, and definitely isn't any worse than most Apple phones and tablets today. It has an Apple A7 chipset and 1 GB of RAM, allowing for the Air to be upgradable to iOS 11. It is very unlikely that it will be compatible with iOS 12, but as of right now, it is fully supported. Speed-wise, it's actually pretty decent. iOS 11 runs on it without too much issue, and there are a ton of new features that make the iPad even closer to a legitimate laptop alternative. Performance on the iPad is okay, nothing special, but it does load things at speeds that aren't painfully slow. iOS 11 was definitely faster, but it still works pretty well regardless. Most apps such as YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, and so on run perfectly well and fine without issue, and even gaming is pretty good for the most part. The rear camera is not very good, with only 5 megapixels and technically the ability to shoot 1080p videos at 30 frames per second. Those videos won't look good, but it can shoot them. If you're getting an iPad, you really shouldn't be using it for a camera, because A, it looks funny, and B, they don't have great cameras, but if you really want to, it does at least take pictures that turn out okay. You can see a few actually pretty nice shots here. Mind you, if it's not in good lighting, it's going to be really hard to get a good shot. The front-facing camera, or FaceTime camera, which probably people would use more because this would be a great FaceTime device, is much worse than the rear-facing camera, with only 1.2 megapixels and 720p video recording capability. It's awful. If you want a video chat with somebody, you can, but it probably should end there because any pictures or video will turn out very grainy. Easily the best feature of the iPad Air has to be the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. Obviously, I'm kidding, but it is a nice feature to have, and actually I think all of Apple's iPads still have it, so, you know, it's nothing special in the iPad lineup, but even so, if you have some nice headphones, you can use them. The iPad Air has a Lightning port for charging, and was the second iPad to come with it after the iPad 4. This makes it easy to plug it into the same charger your iPhone's using, which is very convenient. The device, of course, also has a Bluetooth 4.0, which is a nice commodity, but nothing out of the ordinary considering it came out in 2013. Works perfectly well with my Bluetooth earbuds, which is nice. The battery is actually super good when it comes to the iPad Air, although admittedly it is a bit of a downgrade from the iPad 4 due to the smaller form factor. But you can still easily get a day's worth of moderate to heavy usage, and sometimes multiple days. The battery is 8,820 milliamps, which for reference is about 4 times larger than your general iPhone. Honestly, this battery is really good. iPad batteries are notorious for being very good, and the iPad Air is not really an exception. Although some people were not happy that the iPad 4 was better at that. But, you know, you're getting the smaller form factor, kind of worth it in my opinion. As stated before, most apps are going to run perfectly fine on here. The equivalent iPhone would be the iPhone 5S because of the A7 processor, and honestly, it's good enough for now. You definitely will see some slowdown in iOS 11. It's just bound to happen. That's how it works with these devices. But when it comes down to it, you're going to have compatibility with apps for a long time, even if it won't get iOS 12, which I'm kind of doubting that it will. If you look now, pretty much the minimum iOS for most apps, not all, but most apps is iOS 9, which means if this thing can handle iOS 11, you've probably got 2 to 3 more years of app support. That's pretty decent actually. So is it actually worth buying the iPad Air? Well, it depends what you want from it. When it comes to basic media consumption such as YouTube and Netflix or social media, yes, it can absolutely do that with ease and flying colors. If you want a device with a good camera, I'd pass on this tablet. If you're looking for something to actually replace your laptop, I would consider either getting an iPad Pro or getting an actual laptop. While iOS 11 does bring a whole ton of new functionality to the iPad Air, such as the Files app, it doesn't really get to the point where it can replace a computer. If you want an ultra portable tablet that can do almost anything, this is the perfect iPad for you because it's super thin, super light, and has enough power to satisfy most. From what I've seen, this iPad varies from around $150 to $200 American on eBay, which is actually really good considering what you get. So at this price point, yeah, I would say it's worth buying if it's something you think you will actually use. Keep in mind that it will not be receiving iOS 12, and if that bothers you, maybe look into the iPad Air 2 for not much more money. If this seems like it's a little bit much, you could also go down to the iPad 4, which I have done a review on that, link in the description below, which is probably the lowest iPad I would recommend getting. I wouldn't get the iPad 3 or under. It's a decent device, but it can only go up to iOS 10, which makes the iPad Air look pretty good in comparison. But here's the deal. While this iPad isn't bad, and for the price point it's actually pretty good, there is one iPad that is kind of a better value, and that is iPad, and it's the one that Apple released in 2017. It starts at only $329 on apple.com, and well, it's actually pretty good. It doesn't have all the best features, but it has an A9 processor, which makes it very, very fast, and is going to be supported for a much longer time. This 8 megapixel camera will have iOS 11, iOS 12, and probably iOS 13. It has a pretty similar battery, and it does have Touch ID if that's something you're interested in. This iPad does not, if I hadn't mentioned that before. So at the end of the day, I would recommend getting the 2017 iPad. But if you're on a budget, the iPad Air will perfectly suffice. So that's pretty much all I have to say on this thing. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, I really do appreciate it, and if you enjoyed this review, please consider subscribing and leaving a like to show your support. Leave a dislike if you are a raving lunatic, and give me a follow on Instagram at 91.tech. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.